timer will be shown on the screen. If you're connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we ask attendees to please keep your phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with tonight's meeting. Thank you for participating in your local government.
All right, we're going to have the presentations on the status of the Parks and Recreation Department operations for November 2024 through January of 2025. This is not a project under CEQA Article 20, Section 15378, and under General Rule Article 5, Section 15061. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Madam Commissioners, and welcome everyone this evening. Before we get started on our presentation, I want to make sure that we gave a warm welcome to our new Commissioner, Amy Reed. She's a lifelong resident of the city of Monterey, and she was a teacher at Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, and also a long-term Parks and Recreation employee, including being a director out at Camp Kensabe for many years, and also helped us out with all of our special events and programs, and pretty much a utility player and can do almost anything that was asked of her, and she was willing to help out anywhere it was needed. So welcome, Amy. Thank you for being here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on a Parks and Recreation Department update from November to January. Just a quick update on Laguna Grande JPA. We had a JPA board meeting on January 13th. Our next one will be in April. Our permitting effort continues with multiple agencies, including the California Coastal Commission, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We've been working very closely with the City of Seaside and Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District. The permitting process, as you know, is very long and we're ever changing. It's a moving target. We recently learned that we may now need to consider the southwestern pond turtle habitat. So we are navigating how to approach that new hurdle. We are continuing our grant collaboration with TAMSI and FORTAG. Seaside has been doing the heavy lifting on that, as the routes tend to be on their side of the property. And then doing some joint programming with Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District is very successful. The programs have been sold out with a waiting list, including like beginning birding and different how to use binoculars, and different programs like that have been really, really successful. And we're planning more programs for the spring. Tice couldn't be here this evening. As you guys know, Louis retired in December. We miss him tremendously, but work has been going fast and furious. As you can see, we're still doing lots of work, planting plants, abating animals, power washing the rec trail, 148 hours in transient camp removals, 281 volunteer hours with volunteers in parks, Kiwanis, and the Green Cadre, and lots of debris cleanup after the winter storms. A lot of projects have been going on in the last few months. Luckily, the weather cooperated, so we're able to get things done. We didn't have as much rain in December as we often do. We installed shade structure at Spray Avenue Tot Lot and Casanova Oak Knoll. Installed turf at the Spray Avenue Tot Lot, assisted with the Monterey Bay Half Marathon and holiday events, re-landscaped Spray Avenue Tot Lot, Sloat Avenue Median, Laguna Grande Park, and Jacks Park, repairs at Laguna Grande Park, Dennis Menace Playground, and the Rec Trail, and provided 39 staff hours for irrigation line repairs. Forestry operations have been responding to challenging winter storm events. We might even be having another one tonight, so that should be pretty exciting. I brought our lantern just in case our power goes out, so we can find our way out. We have ongoing fuel reduction efforts, over 1,000 hours of CAL FIRE crew for Greenbelt maintenance and storm cleanup at Via Paraiso, Huckleberry Hill, Iris Canyon, San Burnaby, and Skyline Forest. And I have to say, we've been so fortunate with CAL FIRE. They're not always available to us. We have to take them when we can get them. So when they are available to us, we make sure that we have jobs lined up so that they can jump on those for us. We continued IGSA and habitat rehabilitation projects for the Presidio of Monterey. tree inspections, processed tree removal permits, worked on 300 trees. Monterey County Green Cadre is 300 crew hours assisted with storm debris cleanup. Monterey Recreation Division, I'll hand that over to Shannon for that portion.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to review our special events, community outreach, field sports, and our community center operations. We're going to kind of try and go. So this was the 5th year for holiday meal kit distributions, and we did those in both November and December. We distributed 2,200 meal kits, 800 sandwich meals for those who cannot cook like a full turkey dinner, and then 100 home deliveries with Monterey Fire, PD, Seaside, and Marina Fire departments. Overall, these meal kits served 15,200 individuals, and it was our partnership with the Food Bank for Monterey County, Kiwanis, and our Defense Language Institute volunteers. So this was something that started due to COVID and is just continued, and the demand is actually greater than COVID, I believe. I think it's just the cost of groceries are just impacting a lot of people, and there's less aid. We had a Donuts with Santa photo op. It was our first annual event, which offered donuts, hot cocoa crafts, and a photo opportunity with a Santa that we wanted basically to give people the opportunity to have a free photo with Santa that was like mall quality. In a kind of relaxing environment. So we partnered with the Monterey Fire Department. They let us use Fire Station 13. And our focus was to try and offer a program in the Via Del Monte neighborhood, as that is the neighborhood that's probably is seeing less service from us. And they're also definitely we have lots of turnout and individuals walking from those apartments there. So we had 300 children and families. And what was nice is this was a great partnership because Monterey Fire was there. They let us use their fire station. Monterey PD came and they did a hot cocoa bar. My museum was there and they offered crafts. And so for the first time ever doing it, it was a great turnout. And you can see our good photos that we've got with Santa. And then we're planning on doing this again next year on Saturday, December 6th. And then Monterey Recreation Summer Camps. We are starting. Our last summer theme was Best Summer Ever. We're going to continue that with our High Five Summer 2025. We're offering more camp programs in fiscal year 19, and fiscal year 19 is our benchmark pre-COVID. And we feel that the 5 elements of a quality recreation program include amazing staff, organized, safe, inclusive, and fun. And those have lots of different meanings. We are expanding our marketing for summer 25 for both recruitment and enrollment. And recruitment is actually starting now. We've already gotten some applications. Misty and Josie and a few other staff are visiting the local high schools and colleges. So we're definitely starting that recruitment process right now. We're also reviewing the pay rates for staff to remain competitive because January 1st, minimum wage also went up another 50 cents due to inflation in California. So we're making sure that we're competitive with the local market. And then we also know that we need to provide campership opportunities to support families. So, and that's a photo from this past summer at Camp Kinsabi. So youth field sports, we, since we last saw you, we offered our flag football with 199 participants, 18 teams, and we ended up having 8 waitlisted participants. We're currently coordinating efforts with Monterey High School baseball, softball, and pony leagues because their season has just started. And that takes a lot of coordination to make sure all the fields are in order, and really wouldn't be possible without Parks Division making sure those fields are in good condition. The rain has already started affecting their season because of the infields being flooded and things like that, but they're making us do as much as they can. Staff is planning for spring youth track and field, which we offer at MPC, and then summer camps are busy getting prepared for. Adult field sports, we wrapped up our Ultimate Frisbee League with 4 teams and 68 participants, and are currently taking enrollment and going forward with our spring men's, women's, and co-rec softball leagues. Spring is a little bit smaller of a season for us because we have to work around Pony and the high school. So we typically only have a couple of days where the field is usable for us because Pony and the high school are using the field so much. Okay. Like, make sure we didn't skip anything. Elistero Park Center things are going really well. That's a photo of our kids' night out holiday bash. They were making or decorating sugar cookies there. So that is an event where we let parents go have a night out and kids have a night out as well. And so we have really strong enrollment in our youth programs, dance, fencing, piano, preschool, Monday morning stories. Gymnastics continues to be full with several on the wait list. We've added Kids Create, a STEAM, and weekend art workshops. And then what's coming up is a contractual class with a professional chef called Kids in the Kitchen. And then working on expanding summer camps with art, gymnastics, and Lego. Hilltop is doing very well. We have full enrollment for piano, guitar lessons, adult ceramics, blood drives, and Monday morning stories. Ceramics is now 4 nights a week. And we're looking to expand that with potentially some morning classes or some Saturday classes. Enrollment is strong for Pilates, for bone health, ballet, and theater for kids. Those programs are all almost full. We offered a winter break camp for the holiday break. And like I said earlier, ceramics is expanding and also guitar lessons are expanding. So what's next for Hilltop is focusing on preschool enrollment, summer planning with some potential new contractual programs. And then hopefully we can get moving on some overall center improvements. I think that we need to address the termites first and the roof and those type of repairs before we can look at the more aesthetically pleasing things. We just need to get our bones in order first. Schultze is doing very well. We continue to offer a wide variety of drop-in programs. We also have Meals on Wheels and served a little over 1,000 meals these past 3 months. We also work with Monterey County Food Bank for Monterey County and had served about 1,200 seniors who can come and pick up produce. Wednesday Socials returned, serving adults with special needs. And then we also returned our senior luncheons and events for November through January. So we had a Thanksgiving luncheon, a Christmas luncheon, and a pre-New Year's Eve extravaganza with 182 participants total. And those programs have wait lists. What's coming up next is the Alliance on Aging offers free income tax prep. Aspire will be offering some health workshops for us. We're continuing with our events, and our Play Monterey program is going to the San Francisco Ferry Building and San Luis Obispo. And again, these are not necessarily new programs. They're returning programs from pre-COVID, but we're finally being able to bring things back. Casanova Oak Knoll it's open, and it's open based on program event schedule. As we've talked before, we're still not fully back to pre-COVID staffing levels, and that means staff is spread out as basically as far as we can go. And so we're offering programs based on the schedule. And because at our other community centers, we can supervise more than one program at a time. And unfortunately, Casanova just allows us to only offer one program at a time. So best use of staff and resources. So we've hosted the Via Del Monte and Laguna Grande neighborhood meetings. It's a bookmobile stop. We offer nature journaling with Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District. And we are just rolling out family game nights. And that photo needs to be updated because it's now 3 to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays beginning next week. So a little bit of something for everyone. So what's next? We are having our annual Bunny Hop photo op and extra fun on April 12th. The plan is to have that on Colton Hall lawn, pending the weather. This was a program that started with COVID as a COVID safe program, and it's just kind of extended. We have our Peter Rabbit here to take pictures. And then we've now expanded into face painting and carnival games and other activities for the kids. So it's a great fun event. Fun in the Park with Steam returns to Montecito Park on May 10th. We're going to focus on, again, we just need to work on our marketing and telling our story, preparing for summer 2025 and all of those requirements. Facility improvements are huge. We've talked about this many times. There are so many existing facilities that need our attention. Hilltop is on the list. El Estero Park Center is on the list. I hate to say it, but Schulte is showing a little bit of wear and tear. Solicito has a project for new replacement of the lights. Jack's Park, and hopefully we can get something going there with the infield and potentially the outfield. But there's just so many facilities, and those are just kind of our major ones that need love and attention. So we're also going to focus on rebuilding our program offerings based on staff capacity and budget. We need to talk about what is essential, what do we have to do, what it benefits the most people. We need to manage needs versus wants. You know, there's things that people need, there's things that people want. And that is a difference. And when you have limited resources, we need to focus on what helps the most people. And then we also need to realize what our true demand for services is. So we've had some discussions with individuals saying, let's say we want preschool. Well, we're not seeing the demand necessarily for preschool. And if you want preschool, do you actually have people to enroll, or is it just something that I'd like to see? So that's one thing we're trying to manage, is trying to get a true idea of the actual demand for a program versus, you know, it's just something we'd like to see. So those are things that we've talked about many times with you guys and at our meetings, and just having more continued discussions as we go into the budget prep. I think that's it. I'll hand it over to Bill.
Good evening. So the update for the Sports Center starts with a really big January. December was a big month for us in terms of being able to offer some special promotions and kind of get things warmed up and rolling. And January turned to be a really significant month for us, both in terms of memberships as well as our personal training packages. I think in total in the promotion, we generated over $700,000 in a single month. So we're back. Revenues are higher now than they were in 2019. Memberships are higher now than they were in 2019. And as Ellen can attest, I saw her there this morning, the place is really busy right now. So getting a bike in the spinning classes is challenging if you don't get there early. Getting a spot in the Pilates classes or in the bone builders classes or in Zumba can be challenging just because the studios can only accommodate so much. This is what we want to see and like to see in January, but it is challenging to accommodate all of the members and guests that we have there. The numbers that we looked at in terms of the folks that are coming in, it's almost 12,000 people a week visiting the place. On any given day, we're seeing over 2,000 people a day coming in. And again, you go there and it's all ages, all levels of ability, families, individuals. It's just a very busy time in the facility. Revenue this year passed what we did in our best year in fiscal year 19. So we're looking at a pretty full recovery now from the pandemic days. So we're really excited about that. Next slide. One of the programs that Lori has been working on is this intelligent cycling program. And what we're doing is essentially using some app-based programs you may be familiar with, like Peloton and some of the other programs that you can do online while you're working out. This is based more on kind of a group cycling type format. The previous program that we had been using, Stages, had been phased out. And so we were in a position where we needed to move on to a new program. They have established this as the Intelligent Cycling Program. We have 2 new bikes that are going to be going into the concourse section that also tap into that. They'll be replacing a couple of the older bikes that are not tapped into that new system. The idea is that if you aren't able to attend the actual class time, or if you come in and that class is full and you got to go to the concourse to get your workout in, that you can still tap into the programming. That's really the intent. And we look to expand that going forward. Some of the new classes that Lori Tate has introduced are the boot camp classes, chair yoga, and mindfulness. One of the classes it's had a remarkable a level of growth has been the bone builders classes. So these are classes that people that have limited physical ability or ambulation ability take, and they're generally done usually with a chair assist. And they involve a lot of strengthening activities that help with the ability to get in and out of a chair, and then strengthening activities for bone density and muscle strength. And those classes are significantly higher in demand now than I've ever seen. So we're offering multiple more classes of those, and we're trying to accommodate the demand. But we're seeing upwards of 50 people coming for each of those classes now for the bone builders. So it's a very important section of the population that doesn't normally find programming that's suitable for them. I would say the same with our water aerobic classes. They're just booming. They're huge. There's times where we have to take 5 or 6 lanes to accommodate all of the people that are coming for the aquatic therapeutic classes. And again, these are folks that don't really have a lot of other opportunities to get the daily exercise that they need. So it's really helpful from that perspective. And then the social connection is really critical. One of the things that we're also continuing to try to explore is working with some of our local partners, and Montage Health has been one of the partners we've been working on our wellness series, but also in terms of supporting them with recreational leagues and opportunities. We've done men's and women's basketball leagues. We right now have a volleyball league that we're offering with them that's very popular. So that's something that we're trying to do to kind of help support other aspects of the community as well. Next slide. Sports programs and camps. So these are all under Ryan Nunez. Been with us. He just celebrated. In fact, I think it's this week. He gets his 30th anniversary of working with us. So he started as an intern back in '94. And then was moved into a coordinator position, and he's been with us a very long time. So he does a great job with the programs. The girls and boys basketball programs are wrapping up in about 2 weeks. Been very popular. We're looking at multiple generations. I was in the gym a couple of weeks ago when we had one of our girls' leagues going in, and the former city manager Fred Muir came in with his wife Phyllis to watch their granddaughter play, whose team was being coached by his oldest son, whose wife was also there assisting with the coaching. So, and then while we were there, we had a medical incident in the facility, and Fred's other son David responded as a member of our Monterey Fire Department to assist with that. So we had multiple Muir generations in the facility at the same time. It was really kind of nice to see. Chartwell has been doing a number of programs in our facility. They're actually using it for some of their league practices and games, and that's been very successful as a partnership and support activity. All of our drop-in activities are really doing well. There's always demand for basketball. Badminton has about 70 active players. They're always constantly looking for more court time. Futsal in the evenings has been really popular. Futsal is indoor soccer, so it's a really popular sport. Ping pong, we have about 50 active ping pong players now. We've also got instructors, we've got trainers that are actually volunteering time to teach younger kids how to play ping pong. And one of the things Ryan's working with is a badminton coach who's going to be coming in teaching younger generations how to play badminton as well. And of course, volleyball has been very, very popular. Pickleball is in high demand. When you get the weather outside like we're having right now, kind of hard to play outdoors. So they like to come in, and they're also trying to get court space. And then our fall winter sports camps are full. So we're looking forward to the upcoming sports camps. Next slide. As I mentioned, personal training, we did a really big promotion in January. There were 256 total personal training packages sold from November through January, with the bulk of those coming in the last month. And we're doing some different types of promotional campaigns. So the New Year, New You promotion was 20% off the personal training packages. People really like to lock those in, so they have a consistent schedule with a consistent trainer that they can work with for their annual goals. The group exercise classes have been booming, as I mentioned, and some of the more popular classes right now include Pilates, with an average of about 50 per class. The Bone Builders class, which I mentioned, Zumba is always popular. Everybody loves to come in and dance. And then functional strength and kettlebell workouts have been really improved. And the good thing about the functional strength and the kettlebell workout classes is really there's such a movement in fitness. It really involves strength and full body conditioning, as opposed to just doing the aerobic component. So when you're combining the aerobic with the functional strength training, it's really valuable and very efficient in terms of the use of time. Next slide. Community engagement has been a big focus this year. Partnering with Montage Health has allowed us to put together some really very valuable events for the community. So we did the wellness event on Saturday, the 11th. The theme was Revitalize Together, a family health journey, promoting healthy lifestyles for all ages. So we had multiple tables throughout the facility. There was blood pressure screening. We had the group from Ohana that was doing support for mental health resources. Very popular table. It was constantly busy. The diabetes resources and prevention table, the health and nutrition information and activities table. That's kind of a continuation of a lot of the things that Ellen and I had worked on previously with our lecture series at the Sports Center. We had a body composition scale for people that wanted to be evaluated, and then an Ask a Trainer table, which was also very popular. Not on the slide, but in the front lobby, we also had our housing department doing a housing survey, and they were constantly busy throughout the afternoon. So a very well attended event. Next slide. Aquatics, always busy, of course. We had 2,226 group swim lessons offered in those 3 months, November through January. A lot of private lessons. We did a lifeguard certification course and 2 CPR classes for staff, and quite a few lane reservations with all of the multiple groups that we work with. Over 50 groups, including Special Olympics, therapeutic, multiple sclerosis classes, Naval Postgraduate School classes, senior classes, Monterey Fire Department training, Monterey Bay Aquarium, and Hopkins diver training. I don't think a lot of people realize just how many groups we support with space in that pool area for their training and certification. And a note on the lifeguard training, a lot of pools right now are really struggling to have sufficient staffing to keep open. Even some of our local pools have really struggled to keep them open just because it's very difficult to find lifeguards willing to work for 17, 18 bucks an hour to man those pools. Tony's been very successful by actively working with our local high school, particularly Monterey High, but other schools as well, and actively bringing in those 15, 16-year-old kids, training them up, getting them certified, and then they have those life-saving skills. That helps us open and keep our pools going, but it also helps with resources for the local aquatic environments, including our state junior lifeguard program coming up. Next slide. So what's next? We have another Montage wellness event coming up on March 8th, which is going to be sports medicine for boomers, including Gen X and millennials. We do have our summer swim lessons and camps. The Natatorium project, we had a meeting this week on the Natatorium project. There is a resolution going to City Council on February 18th, in which we're looking for that award to be bidded so we can move forward tentatively. The plan at this time is to look at redoing the plastering of the pool coping, which is the area of tiling around the pool deck, replace the saunas, get the back wall cleaned up and painted, do a complete refresh on the inside of the auditorium. That all is supposed to start taking place in April, and we anticipate completing that project by the end of May with a June reopen. So that is currently what we're working on. We'll know more after we get the council meeting on February 18th. Some of the other things that we're working on are right now the cafe. We have a vendor that was selected. We did two request for proposal processes. On the first proposal, we really weren't satisfied with any of the proposals that were given to operate the cafe inside the sports center, so we reopened it. We have a very successful recruitment on the second RFP process. We have a vendor that we've selected. That vendor's agreed to the terms of the agreement, so we're right now at this point looking to make sure that that agreement goes to our legal department, gets approved by the city manager, and then we look to reopen that cafe here very soon. Next slide.
Yeah, this concludes the,
Do you have something else you'd like to say?
nope, this is going to say it concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Nate, if you could give the particulars about the process for the callers online and those that are in the auditorium of the chambers, recall the comments are about the presentation you just heard.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Speakers need to be identified prior to public comment opening. We have allotted a maximum of 15 minutes for public comment on this item, and each speaker's allotment of time is dependent on the total number of speakers. However, the maximum time someone can speak is 3 minutes. This is a public comment on the previous presentation. If you are in the chamber and you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please stand and line up, or if you're unable, please raise your hand. If you are online and you would also like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 if you've dialed by phone. Melissa, do we have any public comment in the council chambers?
I'm in the chamber, Nate.
Confirmed there's no public comment in the council chambers?
Confirmed.
Great. And we have one public comment online. And the number ending in 705, you may now make your public comment.
Yes, good evening, board members. Lorna Moffett here. I hope I was mistaken. Did I hear that in this presentation that you were spraying the parks with some kind of herbicide or pesticide? I'd like to know if that's the case.
I think maybe she misunderstood when we're talking about the Spray Avenue tot lot, perhaps. The name of the actual park is Spray, but we weren't spraying the park. We're not.
But were you spraying with herbicides, or what were you spraying with, please?
We were not spraying. There was no spraying. It's just the name of the lot, because I think it's on Spray Avenue. So the name of
Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for your public comment. There is no other public comment on this item.
Okay, if there's no more public comments, this public comments are now closed. Thank you. So we're going to call for the approval of the minutes from the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting of Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Nope. No. I don't think we're open for questions on presentations from the board, from the commission yet. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think the commission can ask
Okay.
questions or give comments on that presentation.
Bill, I just wanted to in terms of the natatorium project, is that also the dehumidifier or is that separate?
So the dehumidifier, the plan right now, I believe on March 10th, they're going to be bringing in a large crane to do the extraction of the old dehumidifier. So we may be closed down for anywhere from a day to more than one day during that week for them to remove the old dehumidifier. They're going to install the new dehumidifier. Right now, that's scheduled to be installed in April, and then completed all the hookups and everything they need to do to get it running would be completed in May. So we hope to run the installation and the connection for the new dehumidification project during the time that we're doing the replastering in the pool project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay. So back to the approval of the minutes. Any questions or comments on the minutes? No? Okay. If someone would make a motion to approve the minutes, please. I move to approve. Second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. All right. We're now going to have public, excuse me, yes, we're going to go through the public comments. If the public at this time, any person may address the Parks and Recreation Commission concerning an item that is not on the agenda. And remind that there is a 3-minute limitation, and that also can be adjusted depending upon how many people want to get up and talk. Nate, if you would go through the procedure again, please.
Yes, thank you. So this is an opportunity for the public to provide public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So if you are here to speak about the old Capitol site, that's going to be next. This would be for items that are not on today's agenda. If you are in the council chamber and would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand and line up or raise your hand if you're unable. If you are online, please press the raise hand function or *9 if you've dialed in by phone. Melissa, do we have any public comment in the council chambers?
No, Nate.
We have 2 public comments online. We will start with the last 3 of 705. Please go ahead and give us your public comment.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Lorna Moffett here. I'm appealing to you to spare as many eucalyptus trees as you possibly can for the following reasons. One of the most magnificent trees on earth are the eucalyptus trees, which our forefathers had the intelligence and foresight to plant as fire and windbreaks despite their non-native characteristics. The blue gum can live up to 400 years, and the bees love them, the monarchs love them, the birds and all manner of wildlife and insects love them. At Angel Island, where thousands of eucalyptus trees grew, there were no fires. However, the Native Plant Society came in and insisted they were a fire hazard, and as non-natives and fire hazards should be removed. I quote from a report by George Wright Hills Conservation Network. The California Department of Parks and Recreations tried to restore Angel Island to its native flora and reduce fire danger by cutting down thousands of eucalyptus trees. But the project became an unintended demonstration of how eucalyptus trees actually suppress wildfires. 8 years later, after the removal of the eucalyptus forest, the first wildfire occurred, burning 1.5 acres. 1 year later, 2005, 25 additional acres burned. Finally, on October 12, 2008, a third and much larger fire, driven by fierce north winds, swept flames from the grasses in the new oaks and bays, which burnt down. And they could not stop this fire, no matter what they did. When they came to the 6 remaining acres of eucalyptus trees that had been left standing around the buildings, the fire stopped. The firefighters were able to stop the fire because of their windbreak and fire abilities and the transpiration and fog drip from their leaves. and no one seems to want to learn from that lesson. So I'm asking that you do whatever power you have to understand that there's a lot of false information going on about these beautiful old trees, and that the Native Plant Society is greatly influenced by Monsanto, who started the whole native plant rhetoric. And I'll prove that in future demonstrations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your public comments. The last three of 837, please go ahead and provide your public comments. You will also need to unmute.
Hello, Brian Rosen here. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. As far as fires are concerned, it seems it's kind of a simple solution. Okay, we got to keep taking out more and more trees because the planet's getting drier and drier because man is polluting the planet more and more and putting more junk up in the atmosphere. And where do you stop? You just have to keep taking out more and more trees every year, it would seem, because the public is afraid or whatever. But, you know, the real reason all this bad stuff is happening, and hope you don't think this too silly for me to say this, but humanity is out of touch with their real self. It's real self. It's out of touch with the divine, separated. I mean, look at the state of the world. Look at the wars and what our leaders are doing. I mean, there's a cause and effect going on here. We're separated from our real divine selves. We're all one. We're one with Mother Nature. We're one with each other. And we're one with these. I think these big eucalyptus trees are absolutely precious. They're spiritual elders. They're sacred. They're beautiful. And I think they ought to be kept. I mean, I understand maybe they don't have them to take over everything, but let's certainly keep the magnificent big ones. And I hope they will be valued because they deserve to be valued. And they shouldn't be the scapegoat for everything. There's plenty of fires that have rushed through, like the Thomas Fire, where it's mostly oak trees, enormous devastation. But I want to talk about mass transit and getting to your offices, like in Garland Park. There was a magnificent bus. I used to take it all the time no transfers, right from downtown Monterey. It was easy to get there. It was inexpensive. It ran for many, many, many years, giving people easy access to Garland Park, low-income people, people without cars. Now, after many, many years of apparently being successful, suddenly it got discontinued. And so I think this is very important to have mass transit access. Right now, it's kind of inconvenient. You have to transfer in the Crossroads area, Carmel Rancho. It's just inconvenient. But maybe you could press MST and Monterey Salinas Transit to resume this wonderful bus route. That I remember years ago when there was a serious traffic problem on Carmel Valley Road, I wrote a letter to the editor that if only we could reduce the number of cars and take a bus, and somehow by magic it seemed it happened, and people didn't want to turn it into a 4-lane highway. And when the bus rides were only 5 cents, it was that one day MST did that, it was loaded. So it really is a good bus route, and we need to have good public transit alternative to get out there. And this was the ideal bus route. And I hope you can please contact MST. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comments. We have no other public comment on this item.
Thank you, Nate. So we now have the public appearance items, reports on action. We'll recommend to the City Council a preferred concept for the Old Capitol Site Future Park Plan Development, exempt from CEQA per Article 19, Section 15306, Class 6. Shannon.
There we go. Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to kind of tag team different parts of this presentation. And then we'll have an opportunity for council, Parks and Rec Commission questions, public comment, and some more discussion. So here we are reviewing our Old Capitol site plan. Really, it's a vision for the Old Capitol site and a preferred concept. And the plan would not happen until we went through the full CEQA and the permitting process. So we're asking for a review of the whole process that we came to come up with a preferred concept and a recommendation for City Council this evening. So this is the Old Capitol site, and it is alongside Highway 1. You can see the Del Monte Center there, and if you're facing Highway 1 and looking at the property, it's the hillside running along that, and it's 3 separate parcels that are bisected by Barnett Seagull and Iris Canyon, and so parcel 3 is actually to your right, and that's where the Cal Am tank. Parcel 2 is in the middle, and then parcel 1 would be closest to like Westland House. So for tonight's meeting, we have our design team and Parks and Rec Department staff here to give you a presentation. Again, initial questions from PRC, public comment, any follow-up and questions and discussion, and a vote to recommend a final vision to for the Old Capitol site for City Council consideration. So history for just a little bit of a refresher. From 67 to 83, the site had different zoning, residential, hotel, retail space. And this has been a long-standing project. I would say that while we may have launched this old site plan within the past year, this is nothing new. This has been an ongoing discussion for many, many years. So in December of 93, the City Council approved an MOU with Pebble Beach Company to preserve the site as open space if a future development in Pebble Beach was approved. And it was. And so in 2012, the Monterey County Board of Supervisors required that the 135-acre site be dedicated to a public agency as parkland. And many other agencies were considered and looked at: Monterey County, City, Regional Park District. And in 2019, in the fall of 2019, Pebble Beach Company and the city had this rezoned as parks and open space and adopted a negative declaration. We very quickly began cleanup and fuel reduction. The park space was dedicated to the city without the city having to pay anything for the value of the property. This was by no means free. The city has invested over $1 million in about 5 years on park cleanup, fuel reduction, homeless encampments. It's definitely an ongoing expense to the city, as is right now. We had in fiscal year 23, NCIP funded a project to develop a park plan. And then we went through a competitive request for proposal and contract process with BFS Landscape Architects. They were by no means the lowest bidder. They were the most qualified bidder. And we definitely appreciate all of their knowledge and expertise, and their sub-consultants as well. So the actual conceptual planning process kicked off officially in January of 2024. So we are now just a little over a full year. Yep.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Beth, and I'm an associate principal at BFS Landscape Architects. I'm also here with our project manager, Nicole Limesand. We're going to talk a little bit about the process we've gone through in developing a preferred concept. When we first met with city staff back in January of 2024, a couple of things we wanted to do was understand and kind of set into motion what our project objectives are and what the city's goals were. And so initially when we met, we talked about the project objective, which was develop an overall site plan that responded to the site's environmental sensitivity, responded to the city's resources, and also understood what the community's priorities were. Some of the city's goals that they brought to the table were that they wanted to preserve and protect the natural environment and the environmentally sensitive habitat that is the old Capitol site. They wanted to provide public access, and they wanted to enhance user safety. And part of this included the reduction of illegal camping that is currently going on within the old Capitol site, as also continue to reduce the fire fuel through the vegetation management.
We're going to switch it over to the. Oh, yeah. Go this way. Sorry, just the viewers at home need to be able to see the presentation too. Okay.
Please let me know which slide you want me to be on right now.
Keep going.
One more. Yeah, and then we can go to the, great.
Oh, perfect. You're gonna do that one.
Yeah. So part of the process for this project was sort of instituting and facilitating what we consider to be a fairly robust public outreach. What we included within our original proposal and scope to the city was the facilitation of 2 town hall meetings as well as 2 supplemental online surveys. We worked with the city staff to provide presentation materials and documents to the city's Have Your Say website for the old Capitol site. Shannon and her staff did a great job of posting to the city's social media accounts, publishing our meetings within the weekly newsletters, and announcing these meetings on different forums. Our outreach went out to over 20,000 unique email residents, inviting them to participate and attend the town hall meetings, as well as participate in the online surveys. We did also reach out to our neighboring properties at the old Capitol site. That included Montage, the Naval Development, the La Mesa neighborhood, and Cal Fire. And we also, in July, did a work session with the PRC. Next slide, please. Our first engagement meeting was hosted on February 24th at the Casanova Oak Knolls Community Center. The meeting goals for this was really to provide a listening session. Much of the community had already understood what their priorities and needs were for the old Capitol site. This was an NCIP project. And so we really wanted to give them a forum to come and talk to us about what their priorities were and some of what their concerns were. We concurrently, at the same time we did the town hall, we provided an online community survey that ran for over a month. Both the materials and the survey questions that were presented in person and online were provided in English and Spanish. And we did have an on-site translator available at the in-person event for our initial meeting. Next slide. At our first community engagement meeting, we had 27 in-person attendees and we had 221 online survey responses. to sort of roughly sort of summarize the input that we received, we would sort of boil it down to three things. There was a need to prioritize the environmental preservation and provide education to the public. There was a priority for providing day use recreation programming, things like trails, picnic areas, parking, and restrooms. There was also the need for enhancing the safety at the site. Part of that had to do with fuel management for fire reduction, and also some of that had to do with how do we reduce illegal camping and trespassing. Initially, we heard a lot of feedback for providing access through the site, whether it be through hiking trails, biking. We heard about potential zip lines. We also talked about things like having a designated ranger or host site at this space. So we received a lot of feedback during this initial engagement. We also heard things like Olympic-sized swimming pool here. So we really had to start to kind of reduce down what the feasibility was for what we could put on the site. And that really led us into the next part of the process. So if we go to the next slide, yeah. So one of the things that was a part of BFS's proposal and a part of our consultant team is that we really wanted to include the local experts in their field. So we had Whitson engineers who did the survey for the site. They did topographic mapping. They did the boundary surveys as well as the utility mapping. We worked with EMC Planning, who provided an overview for what our biological and environmental assets were. And then we also had Bill Vaughn Forestry. Bill Vaughn has worked a lot within the Monterey Pine Forest, specifically around the Chomp campus, as well as in Pebble Beach. And so we really wanted to have his expertise on how to deal with the forest management and continued fire fuel reduction process. So as Shannon had said, the Old Capitol site is 135 acres of predominantly Monterey pine forest. And this is segmented by roads into 3 distinct parcels. Part of what the city inherited when they had got ownership of this property was a site includes 2 special attention areas. These special attention areas were designated and deeded for no future development. This was a reflection of work that was done previously within Pebble Beach at the Stevenson campus, as well as some other development by the Pebble Beach company. And we are restricted to doing no work within these 14.5 acres into perpetuity. So that really sort of removes some of the site from our development. Currently, as Shannon had mentioned, the city is performing regular vegetation management. This is being done under the 2022 Greenbelt Fuel Reduction Program. The CAL FIRE provides assistance to the city to do the fuel vegetation management there. And I know they are actively out there on a regular basis. Next slide. So just an overall site map. These are the 3 parcels, and we've identified where our 2 special attention parcels are. So a little bit backwards from what Shannon said, you'll see that we've sort of labeled the parcels 1, 2, 3 from left to right. So when we talk about the parcels, we'll be a little bit different. But what you'll notice is not only do we have the special attention areas, not only do we have the bifurcation by the roads, but we also have some significant drainage corridors that run through this site, specifically through parcel 3. If you've ever kind of been down below where parcel 3 is, there is quite a bit of a riparian corridor that runs through there. Next slide. We worked really closely with the city arborist, specifically Tice Norton, as well as CAL FIRE, to document where the existing fire roads are. There is definitely concern, and we need to pay attention to how we're providing emergency vehicle access through this site and what's currently being maintained. And so we identified that network of access and roads through the site. And this really started to help us maybe determine where the best areas for future trail planning and where we need to sort of make sure that we're allowing for access and vehicle points to be as we get kind of further along in the design. The next slide. So one of the things that we really needed to do when we thought about the old Capitol site was understand some of the existing conditions, and probably the three most important existing conditions was the topography of the site. Where are our slopes? Where are our riparian zones? And we also needed to understand what our biotic issues were. The Monterey pine forest predominantly covers these three parcels. And as we know, the Monterey pine forest is an environmentally sensitive area. And part of the understory within that Monterey pine forest is the Yadon's rain orchid. The Yadon's rain orchid is a federally listed endangered species that is endemic to the Monterey Peninsula. It is at very high risk of going extinct because it only occurs in a very small area. The other really kind of big part is that because of the drainage corridors and the water that runs through the site, we're also in a very archaeologically sensitive area. The city has done some preliminary mapping through their own planning efforts, and there is a lot of expectation that next to the creeks and the drainage corridors, we would be in some very sensitive archaeological spaces. The other part that was also important during these assessments was, what are the city's resources? What is available from the city for planning, both here currently for the planning and the development and implementation of the park, as well as the long-term maintenance. So we met quite a bit with Shannon and her staff to understand their budgets and their staffing. Next slide. So this is just kind of a quick overview on the site suitability mapping. It looks like a heat map, but those are actually the colors kind of correlate to where our slopes are. You'll see that a large part of our parcel 1, which is to the left, has some pretty steep slopes. We're getting into 20 to 30 to even 40% slopes. And as you can kind of see where the Cal-Am water tank is at the very top, those are where the best views are, but those are also where the steepest slopes are. We also had to overlay the kind of where we understand the potential for Yadon's rain orchid to occur. One of the things I should mention is part of the process here wasn't to really get into the nitty gritty and spend a lot of money and expense on doing biological or biotic studies or plant surveys. What the city had asked for us to do was really do a high level review and bring to the table what our experience was in planning and in dealing with these environmentally sensitive areas, and determine what would be feasible for moving to the next steps. What would the CEQA implications be? What would the implications be for CDFW or the Regional Water Quality Control Board? So we took a lot of the existing mapping and the existing resources and really had to kind of work at a very high level. And so you'll notice this is kind of sort of an idea of where we're experiencing those archaeologically sensitive areas, as well as some of those where we expect for Yadons to maybe potentially occur. Next slide. So this is just kind of a quick overview about the Yadon's rain orchid. Yadon's rain orchid, like I said, is it's a small plant. It doesn't necessarily even bloom every year, but it is a federally listed endangered species. And because of that, and because it is endemic and occurs within the Monterey pine forest, it's very limited because of how much we have lost in terms of our pine forest habitat. So when we think about what is the implications for long-term and planning, what we understand and when working with our biologists and our planners is that any sort of disruption we do to the Yadon's rain orchid habitat would have to be mitigated. And mitigation is not just simply planting a plant in its place. There's a lot of requirements that have to go into that. We have to think about maybe 2-to-1 types of ratios. We have to think about where that Yadon's rain orchid would be best suited. We'd have to find similar habitat to mitigate within. And then there's long-term monitoring cost. We just can't plant the plant and walk away. The city would be on the hook to monitor and to manage that habitat that they're displacing in perpetuity. So it's something to really consider as we start to think about what the long-term implications are for developing within the old Capitol site. Next slide.
And I would just say 2-to-1 means 1 acre, 2-to-1 acres, or 2 acres to 1 acre.
Yeah. So a lot of this material is available on the Have Your Say website, but we worked really closely with the city to develop what we considered to be like a programming suitability matrix. We took all of the input we received online, all of their requests for specific programming, and we really had to structure that against what was feasible. Was it, 100% feasible? Was it semi-feasible, or was it not feasible at all? And so what we did is we kind of summarized all that, and we looked at a few handful of items for programming. One was developing public access. We think that by formalizing the existing fire roads, it would really help with sort of minimizing the impacts to the site and disturbing the larger infrastructure habitat there. We're looking at maybe connecting the trails between parcels, so introduction of new trails that would connect the fire roads. And then we also needed to consider that it's really not feasible to develop trails on slopes exceeding 15%. Parking is another thing. I don't think we can have a park, or we can't have open space with offering parking. And as you probably all know, Burnett Siegel, Iris Canyon, Viejo Road, those are not real roads that are conducive to on-shoulder parking. We would have to have a parking slot or a small parking space that was off-road on site. And because of the disruption factor, we really wanted to minimize that to a 10-car maximum. With people, we need to provide amenities. Currently, there is no water or sanitary sewer on the site, so we would be looking at things like potable restrooms or compostable restrooms. We needed to preserve the fire and emergency access points. And then on the next slide, we think this is a great opportunity to really interpret what the city has, which is one of the probably last vestiges of a healthy Monterey pine forest on the Monterey Peninsula. So using interpretive signage and interpretive education through art, we think there's some opportunities to really highlight what a high value resource this is and how unique it is that the city of Monterey has that. We would also look at continued vegetation management to protect the user safety and to continue to mitigate the fire risks on site. Next slide. So we came to the community, and I know some of you have already seen this, with two options. One option was a concept that was a very kind of small scale option. This was about 2 miles of trails that were utilizing existing fire roads, with a sort of focus of about a half a mile of accessible trails. We introduced things like wayfinding nodes and interpretive elements along that parcel. So this is sort of a reduced concept option. The next slide would show option 2, which is a little bit more robust. Instead of 2 miles of trails, we're looking at 5 miles of trails. This would include 1.5 miles of accessible trails. We're also looking at potentially the opportunity to introduce sort of an elevated boardwalk at the wetland area that's down on, kind of along the edge of La Mesa there. And then we'd also look at parking and restrooms as well. So next slide. So we took these concepts after we worked with the city and kind of did all of our assessments. We took these concepts back to the community. And so again, we had a virtual town or in-person town hall, and we had an online survey. Our town hall was on April 23rd, and our survey was concurrently done at the same time, where we presented the option, these two concept options, to the public in hopes of getting their feedback. And again, these materials were provided in both English and Spanish. Next slide. So we had a really robust response to our second round of community engagement. We had 12 people attend our in-person event, but we actually had over 433 online survey respondents respond to our survey. In sort of tracking those survey response, about 225 of those surveys responses were identified as City of Monterey residents. So our initial part for this online survey was to gather input on which option was preferred, option 1 or option 2. And option 2 was sort of the preferred option. It was selected by 91% of the City of Monterey residents. But a part of that initial that online survey, we really received some initial input, and that was very strongly for the consideration of dedicating the site or some of the site to bike facilities. This included a bike skills park, multi-use trail, and potentially bike-only trails. And as we know, about 83 of those comments in support were really directly coming from City of Monterey residents. Next slide. So when we met with city staff to review the overwhelming input we received from the community, what we really decided at that point was, because a lot of that feedback was coming from an online presence, we wanted to provide another opportunity for the community and everybody to gather to maybe re-listen or re-hear some of the information that we had presented at previous meetings. Because what we found is that there is a lot of sensitive habitat on this site, and we wanted to make sure everybody understood what that sensitive habitat includes and what it means if we were to go in and then disrupt that sensitive habitat. So we presented to the PRC in July, sort of through a study session, the old capital site assessments, what we found with our high-level studies. We wanted to provide an overview of kind of those site conditions. And we also wanted to talk about what responses we had received from our previous community events. And at that time, the city and their staff really did a good job of kind of presenting currently what the city's resources were, both from funding and staffing. Next slide. So as a result, we received at least 14 public comments during that meeting, and many of those comments did support designated bike facilities with our bike recreational programming, but we also had support for really considering even more robust conservation practices besides what is currently happening. And there was some encouragement from former city mayors to really allow for the staff to do their due diligence in planning for the future of the site. So we continue to move forward. Next slide. In really working with the staff through this July and December of 2024, we really sat down with staff and we started to talk a lot about it, what the kind of the design and the site. We looked at what the site suitability was for the selection and placement of programs and amenities. And we really talked about what the cost considerations were. You know, we had to consider, what would it cost be to go through and take this through CEQA? What is in the environmental permitting costs going to be? How much can we anticipate in fees and permit fees? And then what is it going to cost to design this project and get it to construction? We then deal with the construction costs, and then we also needed to think about our long-term management costs. Next slide. So some of the questions we had to ask ourselves during this time really was the environmental impacts. How much could we disturb, and how much environmentally sensitive habitat would be disturbed if we were to provide the adequate facilities for bike-focused amenities? And what are those cost implications? Again, we kind of go back to, what was it going to take if we disrupt 13 acres versus 8 acres of Yadon's red orchid? What is that going to look like for long-term planning? What is the suitability of the site? You know, we looked at the site slope maps, and we know a great amount of that site has very steep slopes. And in our research and in our sort of expertise, our kind of feeling is that bike trails probably need to stay on slopes that are less than 15%. We also need to consider what types of soils we're building trails on. The Monterey Peninsula has very highly erosive soils. They're very shaly, so there's a lot of loose material and they erode very quickly. So there was a lot of pieces that we needed to consider. The other piece was if we do limit our programming and our amenities and we start to think about mixing bicyclists and hikers, what does that look like? What does that look like when we bring two user groups together? And then kind of as we pull all that together, one of the things we really realized is although we have a site that's 135 acres, there's really 8 acres that are conducive to development. And those 8 acres are not continuous. They're spread across 3 different parcels. And so I'm going to let Nicole kind of step in here, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the more other studies that we did.
Hello, everyone. To also kind of touch on a point that we discussed last time as well, is that although any introduction of a new of the public is going to be considered an impact in future analysis, our hope is that overlapping with the existing fire roads is going to limit any real impact in real life. And so as we kind of revisited this since the last time we were here, we talked with city staff, we talked with past consultants we've had that have done different types of projects from skate parks to bike parks. And we talked with, we've had regular conversations with the city and other consultants. And so we were kind of getting a little bit more nitty gritty just to kind of explore some of these ideas a little bit more. And we were looking at, it's a very standard thing that with the endangered species on site, there's going to have to be some sort of protective fencing. It's a very standard requirement. And so we were looking at what does that look like in terms of footprint and how are we analyzing these impacts? And so we were looking at if we're overlaying the trails over the existing fire access, we have to maintain a certain width that still maintains their access to the site for site user safety. We also looked at different ways to maximize not just public access to the site, but actual accessibility to the site, ADA access to the site. And so we were looking at, what does that width look like? We need some sort of, material like DG paving that would be ADA accessible. Just doing those kind of levels of analyses that look at what that impact would be overall. Because the site is trifurcated by a couple different roads, we're also looking at how do we connect these sites that are not connected currently. And so looking at the scale of those and how small we could get those, do those have to be vehicular? Can they have different types of fencing that can be removed easily for maintenance and whatnot? So we overall kind of started getting into this typology of what could those look like to analyze these impacts. Next slide, please. So we also kind of looked at like a destination trail, because to return to that, there's only these maybe 7 to 8 acres overall that would really have the least impact if we're looking at some sort of plan implementation down the road. They're also not contiguous, so we were looking at different places where you could have like a destination trail that goes up to the highest parts that have a little bit more views, and what's the width of that. And then we were looking at different types of user types. If we are separating recreation types to kind of dig into that, and with the need for protective fencing, with safety buffers, with need for fire access, what are those footprints? Next slide, please. Also, during the second community meeting, we also got input about the environment and the boardwalks and near the riparian drainage corridor. And so we also looked at kind of the environmental impact of that and the suitability of these programming. We, there's things like helical piles and diamond piers that have lower impacts, both when when this project then goes into CEQA. So we're looking at the different suitability types of getting a little bit more nitty gritty, even though our scope is really to be more bird's eye view vision plan. Next slide, please. So the overall plan, it did get revised a little per these further suitability analyses. And so in the preferred concept plan, after all these further discussions with consultants and the city staff, and we did refine this a little. So the preferred city concept has more, something like 4.5 miles of trails, somewhere a little just too much into sensitive areas. I think we're able to maintain the amount of nodes because that concept of having the nodes actually reduces their footprint a lot. So that was able to be maintained. We were able to keep kind of the boardwalk in that concept, but this was overwhelmingly preferred by the community, and so we wanted to maximize that. I do also think that the accessibility went down from like maybe a 1.5 miles to like about 1.25 to 2. Next slide, please. So each parcel has very distinct characters, which I think we've talked about before. But this one, parcel 1, is really the most pristine of the forests, the Monterey pine forest. And so we did take out some of the concept 2 trail in that one. But it also looks at getting the public on the site, kind of overlapping it with those fire roads, providing amenities at kind of key points like up at the topography and the kind of towards the Caliam water tank, to have those views. We kind of integrated the soils analysis and the slope analysis. So we're kind of looking at where would we need steps, because we don't want to contribute to the erosion, and where those overlap with the arterial trails. Next slide, please. The discovery node we were able to keep in there because we had those nodes that really reduced that footprint. You have the trailhead on this parcel. This is a little bit more of a flat parcel. It's a little bit more coast live oak and a little bit more meadow, which was often said in the outreach as a highly desired feature, with interpretive elements along this kind of loop that would play into like intergenerational education and interaction. The trailhead would have amenities like the portable toilets, bike racks, trail map for wayfinding, and then you have kind of those connector trails, because this has the least amount, I think, of existing fire roads currently. And then looking at those, we're going to need street crossings for any connection of these parcels. Next slide, please. On parcel 3, this one has a lot of Monterey pine as well. This one is the most degraded of the site, I believe, but it also has the most existing fire roads, and kind of maximizing those. I think a lot of the site on the plateau area can be accessible based on the existing slopes, so little disturbance to create that. And then you have following the existing road down to the drainage corridor with the kind of proposed boardwalk system that could have low impact, helical piles. And next slide, please. So again, to go back a little in time, we heard from the first survey, we had a question that was, what activities do you like to do outside in open spaces? And, as expected for anyone who lives here, we have a really strong, passionate community here for bikes. And so we did hear from the beginning. So we've always been trying to look at different recreation types and how they fit into this. Then in the second meeting, we got a couple really great resources that we poured through, and we also heard a much more definitive, kind of either a bike park or bike only trails. So we really looked into how those could fit into the site, and a bike park is just going to have such a large footprint that it's not appropriate to the site. But we tried really hard to kind of look at how bike only trails could fit in. And with having separation of uses and trying to maximize the site for everybody to be able to access it, it's and the sensitivity of this site, and having to also use the kind of existing fire roads, and those fire roads not necessarily having the perfect slopes for best practice for trail design. It's just probably not the most appropriate site. And so we want, those kind of projects sound really cool, but it's just not going to be the most suitable to this specific site. So and then I think it's
Okay. Thank you. So we also looked at city resources, and there's been a lot of discussions that we've had with Parks and Rec Commission, but also City Council. And we also reached out to internal stakeholders. So we reached out to finance and risk management. What are the implications of adding a new recreation facility to the city's robust recreation system? And they did do their research and look out, hiking, walking trails, more passive uses of parks definitely will have less of an impact in terms of risk management. As the city is self-insured, we would be liable for any costs up to a certain dollar amount. And then above that, the city's insurance would kick in. And so the concern with that is, and in doing the research, there's a lot of cities who are in the same boat as us. We're self-insured to a certain dollar amount, and that's not necessarily something that's easily reportable or found. So many cities might have been sued. They might have settled cases under that threshold of the self-insured. Then there were some agencies that were also sued because of higher risk practices or uses of parks. And then those settled for, millions of dollars, $15 million, $7 million. So when we are planning a park and putting together a budget, we are not just looking at the initial construction and all of that, but what does that look like in terms of use and ongoing costs? And you cannot plan a park based on wanted behaviors and the perfect behavior, and you have to plan for any potential external factors as well. So that is definitely a concern that came directly from risk management, but also our finance director weighed in with the concern that we are trying to educate the city council on the amount of city facilities that need attention, and our streets and our sewers. And again, adding to that burden is a major concern. So one thing that I will say is this is not just in general. I don't think anyone's potentially very, very happy with what we're saying. It's whether they want hiking or biking or anything. It's definitely a downer to be having that kind of this conversation. Other considerations, of course, are what life and safety, what considerations need to be accounted for when adding a new amenity to the recreation system. Maintenance, does the city have the staff and current expertise to manage a new amenity? And that is definitely a concern. And I'll talk a little bit more about our Parks and Rec budget as well. The other thing that we've also come to realize is that we have 8 non-continuous acres of usable space across 3 parcels. So again, that severely limits what can happen on this Old Capitol site. So, we did hear from police and fire. Police had their concerns about just in general, some of the area is not very accessible. They have to get on ATVs to patrol it. Fire would have a greater challenge of getting to someone if they need emergency assistance, depending on where they are located on the site. So all of these things put strains on existing city resources and the budget. Next slide. So then we also looked at another park that's become more of a regional bike park. The existing park at Marina's Gloria Jean Tate Park, it was an existing park. It is a very different site than the Old Capitol site. It is more of what you consider a traditional urban park. they put a pump track in there, and that has actually become a regional draw. Placer AI has shown that it's utilized by about 30% of marina residents, and the rest of the use is coming from many miles away, sometimes even 200 miles away. So that's turning that location into a draw, which is fine because that is a very different setting than the old Capitol site. It is a 15-minute drive from the old Capitol site in terms of proximity. It also has a construction footprint, which includes 37 stalls of parkings across 2 acres. And the next phase of that park includes 23 parking spaces for phase 2. So you can see that the difference between what we're proposing with the old Capitol site with about maximum of 10 parking spaces to something of 37 stalls, and turning with the old Capitol site is not intended to be a regional park as well. So it's because it's so surrounded by neighborhoods. There's the La Mesa Village, there's the Westland House. We have to take into account the neighborhood and the key stakeholders as well. Next slide. So this is just a couple of images. The one on the bottom left is an image of the pump track and marina. Now we realize that that is not necessarily the proposed design of a potential pump track or bike track or skills course on the old Capitol site. That is paved asphalt, but you can see that there is a very big difference in the amount of space that's disturbed and what would have to be done, whether it's paved or unpaved. It definitely has a greater impact on the site. And the other thing we need to think about and realize is that on the peninsula in this area, we are not short of bike facilities in any means. We are the Sea Otter Classic is here annually. I believe it's the largest bike event in the country, if not the world. So we need to start thinking more regionally. The Monterey Bay Coastal Rec Trail, which the city of Monterey has a very large portion of that and contributes significant efforts to, is huge. We have the Four-Door National Monument, which has 86 miles of single tracked and unpaved trails over almost 15,000 acres. Garland Ranch, 10 miles over 3,400 acres. The Toro Regional Park, again, another 15 miles of bike trails through some steep terrain and about 5,000 acres of parkland. There's also Laguna Seca, Fortag is coming online. So again, there is not a shortage of bike opportunities on the peninsula. And I think we just need to say that, like, we have to start thinking more regionally when we're talking about city resources. And do we have to provide every amenity to everyone, especially with a site that's so pristine and has the Monterey Pine Forest and the Yaden's Rain Orchid, and is also in the is so in close proximity to neighbors and those type of things. So again, there's not a shortage of bike opportunities. The other thing about the old Capitol site is that it really doesn't connect to any other park space. It's not going to help the multimodal transportation plan. It doesn't connect to the rec trail very easily. It's really kind of an isolated location. And then we also need to keep in mind the Parks and Rec Master Plan, or what serves as our primary plan and guiding document for the city. Overall, that plan determined that the city is well served with a robust and well-designed system of parks and recreation facilities. It cites the need to focus on safety and ongoing maintenance and updating of existing parks and recreation facilities versus new facilities. We also need to keep in mind that we have 4 community centers, a sports center, veterans campground, over 800 acres of parks, beaches, open space with 37 parks, 4 ball fields, and more than a dozen playgrounds and sports courts. So In no means is the city, I think we're above and beyond in terms of park space offered to the community and its residents. So also the goals of the park plan include goal 1, having a unique sense of place by celebrating natural beauty, ecology, art, history, and culture. In fact, one of the primary goals is to celebrate Monterey's distinct natural beauty by emphasizing views of the bay, surrounding hills, and by integrating native flora such as Monterey pines, coast live oaks, and dune plant communities. Again, perfectly aligned with our staff recommendation. And then our diverse community and community engagement and intergenerational health. We definitely wanted to reach out to all aspects, all community members in Monterey. And the plan really is accessible to everyone. There's ADA accessible trails. Just about anyone has a way to walk or hike. And when you turn it into something more than that, that requires you to either purchase safety equipment, rent safety equipment, rent a bike, own a bike, have some sort of special equipment in order to do that, then that's taking it from being open to everyone and open to those who have those resources available to them. So this is really opening it up to be everyone in the community and be inclusive for everyone. The other thing that we also need to keep in mind is keeping ourselves, both making sure we're addressing environmental and economic sustainability and maintaining existing facilities. And then when we also propose a new facility, making sure it's something that we can maintain and address capital improvement, which unfortunately is something that the city is definitely dealing with, is the ongoing capital improvement for all of our infrastructure. And again, accessibility and looking at this more regionally versus just the city of Monterey. And then the city has recently adopted an ADA transition plan. And again, this preferred concept perfectly fits into that ADA transition plan by trying to make sure our trails and everything is accessible to all walk abilities. Next slide. So going on a little bit more, this is the tough part. Our Parks and Recreation Department budget is limited to ongoing operations and general maintenance. We've talked about this many times. You guys have, most of us, been with us through COVID and are aware of kind of our challenges. We are a large department and we do have a lot of amenities and a huge amount of acreage that we're responsible for. Across all 3 divisions, both recreation, sports center, and parks, we staff salaries are approximately 70% of the department budget. And that's because everything we do is labor intensive, whether it's offering a sports camp, teaching an exercise class, swim lessons, or just maintaining all of the parks and beaches. Everything we do is labor intensive. It's not something you can just do without staff. Another big driver for us is, of our department budget, a little over $1.3 million is just utilities alone. And that just continues to grow. If your home water bill and electrical bill are going up, the water bill for heating the pool at the sports center is going up exponentially. So that's a huge challenge for us. Also, we are addressing a lot of our positions. There are very few full-time positions. We are heavily dependent on part-time employees. Right now, we have about 250 part-time employees, and those part-time employees need to be paid competitively because we are in competition with, In-N-Out, Starbucks, Target, all of that. So increases in minimum wage have greatly affected our budgets. And then again, just in general, program supplies, materials, equipment replacement, all continue to rise. If they're rising for you to buy eggs, they're rising for us to buy eggs at Camp Ginsabi. It's just, but we're buying a whole lot more. So that's kind of like the picture of our budget is really, we don't, the downer part of this for everyone, whether you're just wanting hiking trails and very limited access or something more, is that the city budget is limited and there is really no additional funding for even the preferred concept. And we can talk about grants, we can talk about volunteer efforts, we can do those type of things, but there is no guarantees that we will get grants, that we will have a significant volunteer effort, especially since the city has historically not been eligible for many grants because we don't qualify economically. We are looked at as a rich city, but we don't have, our budget is tight, but it is, we just don't qualify it for those requirements for competitive grants. So, next slide. The other part of this, which you may not have seen, but City Council has seen, is the number of facilities that the city has to maintain, including 18 miles of bike facilities, our 36 parks and open spaces, our 97 city facilities, our parking structures, our harbor, marina, our wharf to make sure it doesn't fall into the ocean. So all of these things are part of the city of Monterey, and we have to maintain them. And so the city has just gone through a major assessment of all of its facilities. They had a presentation to City Council in May. And so we are looking at, next slide, a very large total of infrastructure funding needs. In the next 5 years, that's $96 million. In the next 2 years, it's another almost $200 million. So we're looking at a total of almost $300 million in infrastructure funding needs that the city needs to address in the next 6+ years. So again, that's one more reason why we've kind of picked the preferred concept, but really our recommendation is to pick a concept and then we need to focus on existing facilities first. So we're kind of trying to, at this point, wrap up this NCIP project, pick a vision for the site, make a recommendation to City Council, and then move on to addressing existing facilities. Next slide. So this is the difficult thing. We are faced with some hard choices and difficult decisions. Again, we're looking at needs versus wants. What is something that we truly need versus something that we want or are nice to have? What is essential? What does the most good for the most people? Right sizing our expectations in terms of, I think everyone who's been involved in this process, we've all had to reassess what is doable at that site, what we can have. Initial discussions, people had lots of ideas. We realized that camping's probably not an option. Water is a restriction. Dogs are not suitable for that site. So there's lots of things in terms of both staff and the public that most people have come to understand are not feasible at that site. One thing we also need to realize is we need to think regionally. Why does Monterey have to provide everything for everyone? Why can't we think more regionally and think about what's available on the peninsula? We've kind of seen that with a lot of our different groups. So that's a big concern. And then our preferred concept plan, again, I will say it addresses the needs of residents and key stakeholders and does the most good for everyone. So this includes a long-term approach to developing the old Capitol site based on budget realities and resources. Next slide. So next steps, we are recommending that the city continue with vegetation maintenance and fuel modification work and encampment monitoring and enforcement. We also have asked Parks and Rec Commission to take public comment and make a recommendation to the City Council of a preferred concept and a vision for the site, but also hopefully with a focus on a long-term approach and focus on our existing facility needs. And then hopefully City Council will approve a preferred concept for the old Capitol site and give some staff direction as well. Next steps. So our recommendation today is for the Parks and Rec Commission to recommend a preferred concept to City Council. And again, our preferred concept does the most good for the most people, maximizes the site access for all users, considers environmentally sensitive areas, including the Monterey Pine Forest, and protects that as parks open space in the city of Monterey. There are other areas in Monterey that have Monterey pine, but not any area as pristine or that actually is city property. Like Huckleberry Hill is Army, and we do have a lease, but again, that's not the city property. So we are very lucky to have this site dedicated to the city. It respects neighbors, both private and public. We've heard from Glenwood neighbors, Aguajito Oaks, La Mesa, Westland House, like those people closest to that facility who would be, probably utilizing it the most walking distance. And then again, it aligns with our city goals and resources. And another thing to touch on is that Parks and Recreation did have a very steep budget reduction due to COVID, and we still are not back to full 100%. The Recreation Division has 9 employees. We used to have 15.75. The Sports Center used to have 28 employees. They have 8 right now. So we're still in the process of rebuilding and just bringing back existing programs and doing it with a much smaller staff. And so to add a new amenity with not any resources really puts a huge burden on the staff and our operations. So we're open to questions from Parks and Rec Commission at this point, and then public comment, and then we can circle back around to any other questions from commissioners.
So we'll open it up to the commissioners with any questions. Ellen?
So it's my understanding then with all things considered, the recommendation is this preferred plan, limited in scope, but provides access for the most number of people. And if we vote to approve that, then it would go to City Council and they would either approve it or not approve it. But at least at this point, there's no funding for it. So it would be a plan that would be like a seed planted, waiting for a little water to fall on it before it would sprout. But in the meantime, we would still be able to do the fuel reduction and monitor and remove homeless encampments so that nothing gets any worse. Okay.
Yeah, correct. The city has made that commitment and maintains that space and will continue to do that. And that is currently right now about 300,000 annually. And that would continue. And I would say that the city has done a lot. If you haven't remembered what the site was before, it's drastically improved. I think the neighbors would also say how much better it is since we took the property on from Pebble Beach. Another thing that was in the agenda report but may not have been touched on is CAL FIRE and Green Cadre are contributing significant amounts of resources to the old Capitol site. If we were to lose their support, the city would be very hard pressed to come up with that what's lost to make up for what's lost. So right now it is 300,000. If we were to lose CAL FIRE or Green Cadre support, it would be significantly more than that.
Anyone else have a question for the commission?
Yeah. Do those trails connect anywhere through? Like, do they go to Viejo or Aguajito, or is it just self-contained within the park?
Those trails are pretty much self-contained. There are some social trails that may kind of dump out onto Glenwood, but everything really is kind of primarily either onto Barnett Siegel or Iris Canyon.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Ellen?
What is the shelf life on this plan? It's current now, with all the incredible amount of research, that's been done. But, if nothing were developed in 10 years, would we have to possibly recreate some of this, or could it simply be amended to, whatever happens in the future in terms of regulations?
So what's nice about this at this point is this vision can live for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Like this does not expire. Where we would run into a time is we would go through CEQA, which from my understanding does not expire either. But when we get to the environmental permitting process, that has a time limit. So you go through the permitting process and then you need to do a project. Or if you don't break ground and complete that project, those permits expire and you've basically wasted your money for that. So that's why we're kind of saying this is a long-term vision for the site. Let's, bless this. And then with city resources, with potential, we could move forward with CEQA. That would be potentially another stopping point, stopping at CEQA, because then that'll probably tell us even more, possibly more restrictions on the site, and then not move forward with a permitting process unless we are ready to significantly pay for construction and implementation of the project.
So going through
So-
the CEQA is not expensive project?
It's still probably $250,000.
Okay. So it could hold now, or it could hold after CEQA.
Yes.
Speaking of, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Justin, go ahead. I'll speak last.
I would just saying that, and that would be a full EIR, correct?
Yeah. Our hope would be to get a mitigated negative deck. So that would come with mitigation measures then that we would have to put into place to offset any sort of disruption. So as we've been really thinking through that process, part of it is what is the mitigation going to be, and mitigating the Monterey pine forest, the pines, and then the Yadons. Those are two significant things that we really had to think about before we just put something down on paper, because we know that that's going to be very costly and expensive.
Ben, kind of on that note, building upon that, about that, there's about eight acres, I believe, that were in that preferred plan. On those 8 acres, is that from the total acreage of the park that's taking into consideration the rain orchids and those sensitive habitats? That's 8 acres that wouldn't be disturbing those species, or that would be, there still would be some disturbance
There
in that?
could still be some disturbance, but we're, of 135 acres, we're down to 8
To the mid-
non-continuous acres as well, and probably a little bit, some disturbance, but hopefully less. And, but we'll still have some pretty significant environmental
And
mitigation.
costs associated with that.
Yeah.
So when we think about if we're disturbing 8 acres or we're kind of developing on 8 acres, we really had to assume then that we would be setting aside 16 acres into preservation for the Yadon's rain orchid. And our next question is, where does that happen? Where do we set aside those 16 acres? And then the next question is, well, who maintains and monitors that through perpetuity? So, yeah.
Thank you. Can I have a couple of questions? All total, how much has been invested in this site so far?
I think that is, not counting staff time and all the time
that I
that
would like to know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some significant staff time in this whole process, but I think we're right around $1.2 million.
Thank you. Okay. The trails that are on the approved plan, what for the ADA, what is the slope for those trails for the ADA access?
In order to not be a ramp, it has to be under 5% slope.
5%.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And for emergency purposes, is there going to be cell phone tower access there? Or would that have to be installed?
We haven't assessed that. I think that, I mean, just touring it, we've been able to use our phones,
Okay.
but yeah, I don't know how far in that would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my extent. Anyone else have some questions? Okay, thank you. So now we come to the point of public comments. Nate, would you please give the instructions on that, please?
Yes, thank you. So speakers need to be identified prior to public comment opening. We have allotted a maximum of 30 minutes for public comment on this item, and each speaker's allotment of time is dependent on the total number of speakers. However, the maximum amount of time that one speaker can speak is 3 minutes. This is public comment on the previous presentation. If you are in the chambers and you would like to make a public comment on this item, please stand and line up, or if unable, please raise your hand. If you are online and you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or *9 on your phone. And we'll just give a few seconds here for everybody to identify themselves, both in the chambers and as well online. So I'll give a countdown for online from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have 3 public comments online. And then Melissa, how many do we have in the chambers?
We have 9 in the chamber, Nate.
So we have 12 that would like to make a public comment. So let me go here.
Person.
Let me just figure.
Sorry. Yeah, if we could keep it closer to 2 to accommodate everyone, that would be superb. So if we could have our first speaker, please.
Great. So we'll start with council chambers public comment, and we will have a time limit of 2 minutes.
Thank you, Nate.
Good evening, commissioners. I'll start by saying that most good for most people holds no merit when we have legacy exclusion against one user group. My name is Peter Barrage. I'm commenting on behalf of the Monterey Off-Road Cycling Association. The preferred concept for the old Capitol site fails our community by excluding bikes. Hikers and walkers have a monopoly on trail access, while mountain bikers have zero access. A new park space with connectivity to multimodal transportation corridors sits within safe riding distance to neighborhoods, could finally give cyclists a place to ride. Instead, this recommendation proposes the city use taxpayer dollars to build even more hiking trails. Why would the city spend millions building more of a resource we already have versus creating something new we don't have? It isn't fiscally responsible and it defies common sense. Similarly, building bike trails would open federal, state, and grant funding opportunities, as well as private and corporate donations that more hiking trails will not open. The reality is, hiking trails will likely cost the city more than bike trails, and the city will be left to fend for itself versus a community-wide bike project that the majority of our constituents clearly want. The report identifies disturbances to endangered species, sensitive habitats, and archaeologically sensitive areas as reasons mountain biking trails are not feasible. Consistent with other misrepresentations of mountain biking throughout this process, the proposal skirts the fact that hiking trails would have similar impacts. Proposed hiking trails would be 6 feet wide. They require importing stabilizing soils, and the wetlands trail would require an engineered raised wooden walkway. With this plan, hiking trails will result in same or greater environmental impacts than mountain bikes. Cycling is more popular than ever. 1 in 4 Americans will ride bikes this year, and among kids, mountain biking is the fastest growing. Last year, 25,000 middle school and high school students in 32 states participated in mountain biking as organized school sport through the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. We host the country's biggest mountain bike event, the Sea Otter Classic, but in the city of Monterey, we can't even give our kids access to one trail. It's a public embarrassment that will be taking center stage this April unless common sense, fiscal and environmental responsibility, and equitable access prevail. The commission has a choice: evolve and embrace new opportunities, or perpetuate decades of prejudice and exclusion that are based on bias, fixed mindset, and ultimately
Thank
based
you
on what
for your
adults
public
want,
comment.
not what our kids
Thank
need.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Do I? Okay.
Hi, my name's Henrietta Stern. I'm on the board of MORCA, Monterey Off-Road Cycling Association, but I'm speaking as an individual. I have been a mountain bike instructor, a guide, a mentor to little girls through the Little Bellas camp program. And I understand some of your concerns. I listened carefully to your presentation, but I don't understand why, if you're in your parcel 1, you have a bike parking facilities, but a bike is not allowed to go 1 inch past those bike racks. It really seems that in that parcel 1 that's more flat, that there could be some small skill structures or even just some small opportunities for families, especially with younger kids, to enjoy bike rides together. Why can't the fire roads be multi-use? I ride on multi-use fire roads all the time at Fort Ord, Tower Park, Wilder Ranch. There's plenty of room, especially if you have it wide enough to enable fire trucks and whatever to get through. You mentioned intergenerational health in your staff notes, and I see a lot of families at the 8th and Giggling parking lot. It would be really nice, that's in this marina area, it would be really nice to see that type of thing for the residents of Monterey. And I think, echoing what Peter said, it almost seems mean-spirited that bicyclists and families with bicycles and young kids who have such joy on their face when they're riding their little bikes or their Strider bikes to be excluded in such a kind of mean-spirited way, that not even 1 inch of this area can be made available to biking families is really kind of sad. So in closing, please reconsider some sort of access for families with bicycles. That would be really appreciated. Thank you. Also, Garland Ranch does not have 10 miles of trails available to bikes. It's a very small portion of Garland Ranch that bikes are allowed on, so please correct that slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrietta. Next, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Toking. I'm a student at the Naval Postgraduate School and resident of La Mesa Village. Additionally, I'm on the board of the Naval Postgraduate School Cycling Club, a group of about 100 civilian and military cyclists with a love of the outdoors and a dedication to fitness and camaraderie, many of whom also live in La Mesa Village. I'm saddened at the lack of due diligence given to exploring mountain bike options for the old Capitol site. In previous meetings I've attended, the public voice was very clear in its support for cycling trails, but it seems this majority voice has been brushed aside. And I kind of have to ask, what's the point of all the public surveys and listening sessions if they really carry no weight for the final proposal? It seems that the plan all along was kind of to make a few hiking trails. So why bother with all of that? Putting my personal feelings aside, I saw that BFS provided 7 reasons to exclude bike trails. I'm probably gonna have to cut that a little bit short, but it just doesn't make sense to me that if we're still putting 14-foot wide hiking trails out there, the math just doesn't add up for if you're gonna put hiking trails or biking trails, it just doesn't quite make sense out there. And then the insinuation that I think it was number 7, lack of support of adjacent neighbors and property owners due to concerns about trespassing and property disruption. It's a little bit insulting for me to be assumed that just because I ride a bike that I'm going to be a trespasser and a disturbance out there. I've been back there quite a bit. There's active homeless camps out there. As of last week, I've got pictures on my phone, old engine blocks stored out there, shopping carts, all kind of stuff. Like, I get it, we want to maintain it, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be the cyclists that are the ones that are going to be, we're going to be the ones taking care of it. So in closing, I would just ask that the council consider adding bikes to the plan. I think it would be great for the military community that lives there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John, and I'm been proudly living in Monterey for about 20 years. Before living in Monterey, I was living in Salinas, and biking was a big part of my life as a kid. There's a lot of access to some really great parks. I think we were mentioned on the regional side. But when I moved to Monterey, I basically stopped biking. No access to the mountain biking was a little challenging for me, and I didn't like biking on the streets as a kid. Neither did my parents. So kind of stopped biking. When I moved to college, I moved to Burlington, Vermont, and there was a really strong biking community there. Really strong. You get done with work, put your suit on, go hit trails right out of the city. I mean, it's really accessible. It was really great. And you could get out into the nature, into the dirt roads, or you could be, on the up in the mountains as well. It was really great biking. And, afterwards, have a pizza slice and a pint, and it made a lot of great community. And there was a really strong energy and passion for this community. And I've noticed it in other communities around California as well. I think Santa Cruz does it really well. I think Monterey lacks that kind of sense of outdoorsy, whether it's in hiking, even as a young person. 31, and unfortunately, a lot of my friends have left the area because they're outdoorsy as well, but there's not as much of a community aspect of this kind of outdoorsy side for the young people. And I think something like a bike park locally actually would be really accessible. I mean, I ride my bike from Monterey through Aguajito all the time. And it would be awesome if there was a bike park there just to stop in and do some laps and meet some friends. And I could definitely guarantee that it would be a community builder, and it would also lead us into downtown probably after to get a slice of pizza, drink a pint of beer, and help support some small businesses. But I definitely know for a young group of outdoorsy people, it would create a lot of community and foster a lot of passion for our parks and rec as well. So just random citizen saying hello. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Mike Dawson. I have a long history of following this project along. I was one of the people who were working on the park project before it was a park, when it was all homeless people that the Pebble Beach Company neglected to move out of their area, so that they were kind of controlling that whole zone over there. But I just thought I'd point out to others that there's in the report, the staff report, there's 7 reasons why why we don't need biking in this park. And so I think I would take staff's word on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next, please.
Good evening. Hello. My name is Nate Buchanan. Not going to talk about bikes. I'm a student at the Middlebury Institute, and I'm studying environmental policy. And I want to come out here and say, first of all, I really like this plan. I totally think it's a great way, to balance public access and one of the most precious, beautiful ecosystems we have, and something that makes Monterey the special, unique place it is. But I wanted to raise a concern about the lack of mention of climate adaptation in the forestry plan. I know we talked about, fuel collection for fires. We talked about that aspect, but effective adaptation for forestry is a lot more than just removing brush. We can do invasive species reduction. We can do, I think most important of all is just having a basis in our plan that says we're going to focus on climate adaptation. And I think Councilwoman Ellen McEwen, nice to meet you. What you said about this being a seed, if we're planting a seed, it should be the right kind of seed. And if it needs to have all the components in it. And I think one of those components is explicit mention of how are we going to plan this park to be adaptable and resilient to the climate. We want this to last for future generations. We want it to be something that, if it's a $12 million investment as well, we want it to last. We want it to actually pay off. And so I think that as we see more fires and more floods and all of these events, that it's critical that we actively, explicitly put this in our planning, rather than just kind of mention a few components of it and instead center it. So that's what I'm advocating. And thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Nikki Nedeff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. I am representing the California Native Plant Society, the Monterey Bay chapter. And although the chapter has not taken an official position on the preferred concept, I do want to mention a few things that are really relevant to your decision tonight. One is that you have an extraordinary piece of property that not only supports the Monterey Pine Forest, but rare and endangered, and in fact, federally endangered plants, the Yaden's rain orchid. This little orchid is a cryptic species. Its life history is not well understood. It comes from a corm, a little bulb under the ground. It sends up leaves if it decides to grow that year or stay dormant for that year. It sends up leaves in February, a flowering stalk throughout March and April. It doesn't really flower until May or June. It's deer candy when it's in the flowering stage. So even if it does grow with leaves, the flowering stalk may disappear because of herbivory. The leaves wither as the flowering stalk grows, so you don't know that it's even there. But you have an opportunity to highlight this unique species, to actually consider the Old Capitol site sort of like a natural history living museum, offer the opportunity for education, for highlighting some of the unique resources you have here in Monterey. I have a map from a 1996 report prepared by the California Department of Fish and Game, which addressed mapping of the Yaden's piperia, which, by the way, is named after Vern Yaden, the emeritus director of the PG Natural History Museum. I have a map here for you. It identifies the Old Capitol site and says that there are nearly 2,500 Yaden's rain orchid on that site. Want to compliment the staff, want to compliment BFS for the very thorough analysis, and leave you with this map to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Who
Next,
can I
please.
give this to? Yeah.
I'm Lee Whitney from the Glenwood neighborhood. Great presentation this evening. Girls, the department did an excellent, staff did an excellent job. We have been talking about this and working on this a long time. And this is just the neighborhood committees that started in January of 2020. But the Old Capitol project's been around a lot longer. The native Monterey cypress tree, 1847, who knew? Monterey pines, 1850. 80 years after Monterey became a city in 1770. We're going to be 255 years old this coming year. Happy birthday, Monterey. It was our location and our history that made us special. Not a bicycle park. Other cities have bicycle parks, but it's not what made them either. It was the people. It was the environment and the respect for all the natural environment and respect for each other. Morka may have a really good concept of what they like to do with the bicycles, but it needs more space for them to do it properly. And with only 8 acres, which is 6% of the 135 acres, it's not really suitable to put in that area. They need more space. So, and there's plenty of other locations that they could propose to do their project. We need to respect this land and its animal inhabitants. It's not a choice. It's our responsibility, and I thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Good evening. My name is Clyde Roberson. I'm the happily retired mayor of Monterey. I want to thank the commissioners. Thank you so much for your service, for sitting through not only this, but everything that you do for us. And Karen and your department, your wonderful staff, what a great oversight of all the good things that are happening. I will get to the Old Capitol site. Bill, it warms my heart that our sports center is back, because we were very concerned during the pandemic, and there was never any doubt in my mind that that would happen. I'm so pleased you're our director there too. The budget overview. Measure S will expire. That's the one that goes for streets, sidewalks, storm drains, etc. And I hope I'm around where I can lead the charge to get that 1% sales tax renewed for capital projects throughout the city. So it's not as dire as it looks with all of our capital improvements, but we've been dealing this for years and years. So that's something we'll have to look at, and that could go to the Old Capitol site. And not only that, the neighborhood and community improvement program is a source for in-house funding as well. I've been involved in the Old Capitol sites since my first election in 1981. I won't get into all that history, but I was so gratified when the city was able to get this land free. But obviously, there are always attachments when you get something free because you have to invest. And I was always open to active uses on this site. But after looking at the outstanding consultant's report, I don't see how we can come to any other conclusion except the recommendation. It's just so ultimately clear to me. In fact, I'll go on record as giving up my zip line.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right. So I think we have 3 online. Clyde? Nate? Clyde?
Correct. Yes, we will start with the last 3 numbers, 902. You can unmute yourself and there you go.
Good evening. My name is Nina Beatty. I missed the announcements in the newspaper for the town hall meetings. Were they put in the newspaper? I just wanted to say regarding the project, there are few lightly touched natural places in Monterey or on the peninsula. The nature is the public too. And what's best for nature, which is in short supply? I ask you not to break what we still have left. I support the existing condition as the most protective of this rare habitat. And it's the cheapest alternative for the city, which has budget problems. Limited public access would help humans appreciate this fragile and incredible space, walking, grounded at a human speed, children slowing down to observe. The concept 3 is not preferable, it's too intensive. I misunderstood the staff report because I understood that it involved also bicycle use. So I see that it does not. But the intensive use is not preferred for nature or maximizing nature's use of this area, or even preferred by your presenters tonight. If you were able to pull nature, trees, plants, birds, animals, reptiles, and insects have smaller and smaller areas to exist anymore. And those spaces are getting more and more degraded and stressed as humans demand access. Here in this meeting, demand bicycle access, but there's no collaboration with nature. Cal fires already damaged the habitat, including traumatizing and killing birds, as we heard from a representative, a local Audubon. And the city must pause that work, that quote, vegetation management work, and review what they're actually accomplishing, which includes erosion and increased fire danger by facilitating greater wind intrusion into these areas. Back to bicycles, they aren't compatible with the space. And please don't allow these machines on the site. Creatures that can't get out of their way of these machines like snakes
Nina,
and lizards.
the
Yes.
2-minute limit. Thank you so much. Next, Nate.
Number ending in 705.
2 minutes.
Yes, so Lorna Moffett here. I am a biker, and I would hope you will go for alternative 1 so the wildlife have a refuge. There's plenty of bike trails for us bikers. We don't need to intrude on every single one. Also, it saves money for the city, and in this stark time when we have criminals running the White House and looters such as us, God knows when cities will be reimbursed for emergency funds. Also, I've noticed many bike riders are becoming more and more inconsiderate of pedestrians, hurtling along at inappropriate speeds, endangering people, and roughshotting over terrain. If you do alternative 2 or 3, please allow for horseback riding as they do in Garland Park. I've noticed that there's more EV type of bicycles, and they're hurtling at enormous speeds, very dangerous, and there's no police on the Monterey bike path to stop them. So how are you going to stop them up there in that secluded area? Please keep the little 3-parcel capital site for wildlife and walkers if you must. But that should include horseback riders. Horses are part of the natural landscape. They are native. And one day when we allow them to return as wild herbivores, they will play a huge role in reducing wildfires with their grazing capabilities. What we truly need is some areas left for wildlife, not bikers, and reduced hiking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorna. Nate, is that it?
We have one more public comment, number ending in 837.
Brian Rosen here. It's nice to speak with all of you. You know, down in Santa Barbara, where my mom lived and I was taking care of her, when I would go on the trails, sometimes I was literally hit a couple of times by bicyclists, and then they blamed me for it because they had their bells and I didn't hear it or whatever. You know, sharp corners. There's a lot of areas not really appropriate for fast moving bicycles. And it does kind of make it too easy in some areas to get places. It diminishes the wilderness experience. I love going up to Yosemite or the John Muir Wilderness area where they don't allow bicycles. I don't think they fit in the wilderness type of setting. I think there should be places for bicycles that are appropriate, that don't have corners that you're going to run into people and scare wildlife, but not widespread as the bicycle associations would like. And I know they're a powerful lobby. I would like to, like down in Santa Barbara, again, people, the popular Hot Springs Trail, people walk for like a mile to get there. So I don't think we need too many little off-road parking lots, but I do support giving bicycles to low-income people. In Santa Barbara, they have the bicycles for rent on street corners, and if you're low income, you get one for like $35 a year. And I think that's a good thing to get to the trailhead that way. And I think we should press for that. Do we want to make and better public transit access, like restoring line 24? But as far as having the disruption of fast moving electric and non-electric bicycles, I think it's very inappropriate. It's going to be very expensive to maintain the trails, all the rut holes. And we don't need big, wide trails. We just need little scenic, little narrow trails. Things worked out pretty well like 150 years ago. I mean, you know, it wasn't so expensive, but I understand there's liability. I wish you would just protect the maximum and keep it a wilderness experience like Yosemite. And thank you very much for listening to my comment.
Thank you, Brian. That's it, Nate?
There is no more public comment.
All right. So we're going to now return to the commission if you have any questions on the presentation. You did an excellent job in making your position quite clear because there's no questions, right?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Okay. So we need to make a motion about this, and the motion would appear on our agenda. If someone would make that motion, please. It's the recommend to the city council preferred concept for the old Capitol site.
That we approve the concept.
For the old Capitol site, future park plan development.
The preferred concept for the old Capitol site.
Future plan
Future plan.
development, right, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a second on that, please?
I'll second.
Like to vote, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. So now we're going to the recommendation that we want to pass to the city council for the approval of the use Celestino Ballpark for dates in May, June, July, and August 2025 by the Pecos League of Professional Baseball Clubs, and recommend conditions for a license agreement regarding field use, alcohol use, admission fee, temporary banners. This is not a project under CEQA Article 20, Section 15378, and under General Rule Article 5, Section 15061. Nate, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have a presentation in regard to the Pecos League potentially coming back for the 2025 season. I have a brief presentation here. So Pecos League did start in 2010 in Texas, and they also opened up a league here in California in 2017. The Pecos then had a team start in 2017, the Monterey Amberjacks, which I'm sure Most of you are aware, and they played from 2017 to 2019. 2020, due to COVID, there was no season. And then for 2021 to 23, they also played at Solicito. We did receive a letter from the Pecos League that they requested to return for the 2025 season. Once we received that, staff did meet with the Pecos representative and started to work on the contract requirements. The season would run May through August of 2025. The games are primarily Saturdays at 6 o'clock and Sundays at 1 o'clock. There is one Friday night game, which is July 4th. The first game would be, if this was approved by the commission and also by the city council, the first game would be scheduled for Sunday, May 25th. The benefits that this provides to Monterey, it's an additional activity that's offered in the core of downtown Monterey during the busy summer months. Of course, with the additional traffic of patrons coming to the game, this would also increase traffic to local businesses surrounding Solicito Ballpark. Also, this fosters a sense of community and pride and physical and healthy lifestyle activities for the community as well. So what we're recommending today for the council is that you grant the Pecos League the use of the Solicito Ballpark for the summer of 2025 and recommend City Council approve for a license agreement with conditions for the field use, alcohol sale and use, security, admission fees, temporary banners, and other permitted uses and restrictions. So that is the presentation that I have for you tonight. I'm here to answer any questions, and of course, we'll open it up for public comment as well.
Do the commissioners, pardon me, do the commissioners have any questions for Nate? Ellen?
Hi, Nate. Ellen McEwen here. It sounds very similar to the arrangement we had before. And as I recall, it worked out really well. Is that correct?
Yes. So, yeah, it will work very similar to it has in the past. There was some hiccups that we've had, which is primarily the reason why they were not here last year, and that was in regard to insurance and also the security, having security guards, which is one of the requirements. They did have some challenges for that, but I did reach out to the representative today, and he basically assured me that he has both of those already ready to go, just pending the approval from the city on this contract.
Sounds good then. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Yeah. Nate, is this in the past, was this always a year-to-year contract situation, or was it a multi-year deal before?
So I believe it was a multi-year. I think we did a 5-year contract. And then I think the last year was a single year. If Shannon can correct me if I'm incorrect on that. And then this would be a 1-year contract for 2025.
So it was actually the reverse of that. The first year was an initial 1-year contract. Then they came back for 1 year with an optional 4 years. And so that's why we're recommending a 1-year agreement, just to kind of see if we can work through any of the challenges. And then we'll come back again after this season for if they're interested in returning for multi-years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Ben?
I'm curious, is there any revenue stream or opportunity from this partnership?
So there is all of the fees that are associated for the Amberjacks to use Solicito. So there is the actual rental of the field. They do pay for the staff that are working the events. We have one staff person that's dedicated to make sure that the lights are on, that the restrooms are unlocked, everything runs smoothly. And then for the Saturday night games and the one Friday night game, they pay for the use of the lights as well.
Nate, did they have alcohol sales before?
They did have alcohol sales before.
And what is it they sell?
They would just sell beer.
Okay. Glad to hear that there's no hard alcohol. All right, that's it for me. Anyone else have a question? Okay. If there are no more questions from us, we're going to open it up for public comments. So Nate, if you could take care of that.
Yes, if there's anyone in the council chambers that would like to make a public comment on this item, please identify yourself by standing or raising your hand. If you're online and you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function or press *9 if you've dialed by phone.
I'm in the chamber, Nate.
And I have no public comment online.
All right. And no further discussion from the commissioners? All right, thank you. If someone would like to make a
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I motion that we recommend city council approval for the use of Solicitor Ballpark for dates in May, June, July, and August of 2025 by the Pecos League of Professional Baseball Clubs, and recommend conditions for a license agreement regarding field use, alcohol use, admission fee, and temporary banners.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. All right. So now we come to the point where we're going to have staff comments, and we'll give it to Karen. Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's been a long night, so I'll keep it very short. Just want to make sure I thank everyone's participation tonight. It just means a lot to see everyone participating and supporting the staff in our efforts. Thank you to our consultants for all the hard work that you've done and the excessive amount of meetings that you've done with us and the public to make sure we get this right. And thank you to our entire staff for all the hard work over the past few months, especially getting over the Christmas holidays and the new year and all the new events and everything that we're doing. And a special thank you for this commission, every single one of you here tonight on such an important night for our department. So thank you so much for your service and your dedication to us. I really, words can't express how much it means to us. So thank you.
Thank you for the support and welcome to Amy. Glad to see you here.
Shannon?
No, I mean, thank you for hanging in there with this long meeting and everything. And we're just really, really busy already. Feel like summer's coming, and thank you, Amy, for joining the commission. And we'll be giving you more updates and about everything that's coming, and hopefully we'll have you guys out to Camp Kinsabi. But thank you all very much for your support. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry Tice is not here, but I'm sure we understand what you'd be talking about. Commissioners, any comments to the Parks and Recreation Department?
Just thank you for the opportunity to serve on the commission, and I'm excited to be back in the city in a new capacity.
Great to have you here. Thank you. Ben, anything?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to the staff for the due diligence and also for all the information and details, and the consultants as well. Also, thank you to the public for all those comments. I think it's really important that the city considers this desire and need in the community in the future. Obviously, this didn't seem like the time and place, but in the future to keep that in mind as well. But thank you for all the hard work and all the detail and information.
I got to say, every time I come to one of these meetings, I'm filled with such awe at everything that you're able to do in such a time of budget restrictions. So thank you for all your hard work. And I'm so glad to hear about the old Capitol site in such great detail. And it's so pristine. We need to honor that site, and boy, you did. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Justin? I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Christian?
It's okay.
Justin?
I'll continue the love fest and just, of course, say thank you. But I also want to point out the fact that you guys brought up issues that weren't always in agreement with certain aspects of it. I'm a longtime mountain biker, and I used to mountain bike all the time. But we can't please everybody, unfortunately. But to address everybody is what's necessary. And I think you guys did that excellently. I look forward to seeing what progresses. The seed that is planted, who knows, years down horseback riding or mountain biking or whatever that pursues, that might be an option. But thank you for addressing, even sometimes when the topics aren't, going to give the answer that you would hope to give everybody. So thanks.
Justin.
Yeah, echoing everyone's comments, thank you for this really in-depth presentation. I think this was one of the best presentations I've seen in one of these meetings. It's really, really, the renderings, everything looks amazing. I mean, I wish we could build it, but eventually it'd be nice to have a nature preserve in Monterey. I think that's really a grand vision for something to strive to when we can get that budget. And I think that's really exciting, just looking forward. And I'm excited baseball is back.
Kathy.
Echo. Also, thank you to the staff. I feel like I know we disappointed some people tonight, but after walking the site a couple of times now, I just don't see it being a simple. I don't see it any other way. I think this is a good plan. I think that it was well thought out, and I appreciate the time and the diligence also that the city and the contractor have spent on this. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all the commissioners for showing up tonight. That was a pretty important meeting for everyone to attend. And welcome, Amy. Glad to have you here. And I would like to, I'm sorry Tice is not here, because this morning I was able to take my dogs for a walk on the recreation trail, and all the barriers are gone. The dogs are no longer interested in the smell of the seals because it's not there. So, I mean, they did a phenomenal job, and that is also available for bicycles. There you go. So, when the number came up of 25 employees at the sports center before COVID hit, and now you're at 8 full-time?
6 with 2 pending.
Okay. I mean, that's leverage. That is huge. I mean, it's amazing what you're able to accomplish, all of you, with the reduced staffs. And I'm probably the city council and the mayor expect that going forward. But I think it's in our best interest to make sure that you get more resources. So thank you for the phenomenal job you all do. And I believe the next regular meeting is going to be Wednesday, March 12th, 2025 at 5:30. And with that, I adjourn.